Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Data Tea. My name is Armon Petrossian. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Coalesce. I've also got my co-founder here, Satish, Jayanti, our Chief Product and Technology Officer, with two really special guests sitting down together in their office, Bill Magnuson and Spencer Burke. Welcome, you two. It's a pleasure to have you both. I'm really excited about this conversation. I've got a ton of questions. Before I jump into any of them, would love just a quick intro on both of your sides before we jump into the episode today.
Yeah, sure. Spencer, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm Spencer Burke, the Senior Vice President of Growth at Braze. Been at Braze over 14 years, so I was lucky enough to join Bill a couple of months after he founded Braze.
Yeah, and I'd like to say I've been here the whole time, but Spencer's basically been here the whole time as well. We founded Braze in July of 2011. I was the CTO at the beginning, and co-founder took over the CEO role in 2017, and have seen a lot of evolution in the space, a lot of it driven by data and data technology trends, and so really excited to have this conversation today.
Awesome. Welcome to both of you. Satish, I don't know if you want to add anything, quick intro, and then I'll start firing away.
Yeah, I'm Satish Jayanti. As I said, I oversee the product and technology, and my background has always been in the building data foundation layers, which is where systems like yourselves likely to consume data for serving the end user.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right into it. I did see, Spencer, that you have been at Braze pretty much since the very beginning, so I'm looking forward to asking you some of the questions around your experience. But before I do, Bill, just starting with you, I mean, both Satish and I as co-founders, we've gone through the inception stages of starting a business and all the fun times that come along with it. But I would just be curious, what inspired you or triggered you to actually start Braze in the first place? Like, can you give us a little bit of the founding story?
Yeah, I mean, I think a few things all came together in that 2011 time period, but the most important thing was just the promise and opportunity of mobile entering the scene. I had worked at Google in 2009 and 2010 on a team in Google Research associated with Android. The team was called App Inventor for Android, and we built a visual programming language for building Android applications. That'll become relevant as we chat later and talk about Canvas, which is Braze's visual programming language that marketers use to implement and design customer engagement programs. But was there for the earliest days of Android and mobile. Cupcake launched that summer that I was out there. I remember seeing the big fiberglass cupcake get rolled out on the front lawn, and just having that front row seat for mobile for me built this tremendous conviction in really two stages. First was that huge businesses would be born and built to be mobile first, and that was certainly not the case yet in July of 2011. And we can kind of talk through some of that why now question that I think is so important in venture financing, if you guys want to dig into that later. But the other one was that the wide-scale adoption of mobile by consumers would force change in business, in the enterprises. And of course, we've seen that happen over time as our relationships with technology, with each other, with institutions, with knowledge, et cetera, have all, changed over time. And what we really wanted to do, and what I was really motivated by, was just being at the forefront of that wave of massive disruption and wanting to work on a hard business problem that I thought, where I thought new opportunities would arise because of that technology change. And so when you look at what Braze does, we're a customer engagement platform. Mm-hmm. We help brands build and nurture and strengthen relationships with their customers over time. We want them to do so with having a strong data-oriented understanding of the context of their customer, what they care about, what makes them tick, where they are in their journey. Be able to use that context combined with sophisticated technology and intelligence to drive the right interactions that are going to then build value in those relationships over time. But that all boils down to actually some very human things, which are like, if you want to build a strong business, we believe you should do so by having strong relationships with your customers who are humans. And if we as humans want to build strong relationships with each other, it starts with paying attention when we first meet. looking for those cues of interest, the body language, tone of voice, et cetera, really paying attention to the details and the context so that we can use that understanding to just have more enriching conversations and better shared experiences over time. And if we do that, those basic things will build strong relationships with each other. And what we wanted to do was use technology, the disruption that was coming about because of mobile, to just create that opportunity for more sustainable businesses to be created. And that really has been, the driving force behind Braze across all of these 14 years. And, a lot of different aspects to talk about. But, I think it all started with just that tremendous conviction in mobile as a disruptive technology and seeing the opportunity to build a business that was focused in the fundamentals of how new companies and old companies adapting to new consumer behaviors would be able to strengthen themselves as businesses by really looking at the opportunities that disruption created.
That's incredible, and I certainly remember the platform shift of mobile and how big of a shift it was, disruption, whatever you want to call it. I think we're obviously going through something similar on the AI side. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of talking points about that here later on this webcast and podcast. When you did see that firsthand, when you did see that shift, and you mentioned you had a ton of conviction around it, did you think that it would be to the magnitude that it is today or bigger? Or like, what was your perspective on it as far as like any surprises from leaving, starting Braze, and actually seeing that come to life?
Yeah, I think my conviction in mobile that it would be an extremely meaningful part of every human's, future with technology was perhaps a little bit early and maybe didn't have all the right supporting data in 2011, but I would also say ended up being true as well, right? And so that part of the opening thesis, I think that conviction was there from the very beginning. I think the hard part is really navigating both the way that markets change over time, where value is created kind of in the value chain, also with respect to business priorities and all the skill sets that get built within organizations over time as they evolve and adapt to the new realities of these technologies, and how do you build for enduring areas of value creation in the face of disruption. And I think that's an area where this wave of disruption that's happening now with new Gen AI capabilities is being supercharged by the fact that we, in the intervening time, put really advanced technology in the hands of basically every human on the planet, and also, I think when we look at customer engagement as an example, it's a field that has evolved from merely like batch and blast campaign driven thinking to something that's really taking a holistic customer journey, being data driven, having new insights derived from an experimental process, and also by virtue of really the melding together of customer journeys and our digital experience with our lived experience, and how we've really just had mobile technology permeate every aspect of our lives, both digital and physical. What that means is that this problem of customer engagement is not one that is like solely marketing oriented anymore. You need to have cross-discipline collaboration across creative and marketing skill sets, data engineering and analysis, as well as product and engineering. And that also means that you need to have collaboration across that entire data sphere. I guess I'm data platform sphere, and be able to have all the right customer touch points to deliver that coordinated experience that actually helps you stand out of the noise and that your customer actually values. And if you can achieve that, you get that reciprocal value creation, and that's what builds strong relationships. But all of that has really taken an advance simultaneously of technology and skill set. It's evolved a lot the way that teams get organized and businesses prioritize a lot of these things around first-party data investment, the building of direct and first-party relationships. And I think that the sheer pervasivity of first-party relationship building too, when you look at the fact that companies in all different parts of supply chains and in the economy across all different verticals, because of the entrance of aggregators and the way that personal digital technology has created the opportunity for these touch points, it's become an imperative for brands of all kinds. And I think that's something that I think we intuitively understood because we were seeing the importance of direct relationships in mobile apps and in some of these early technologies. I think the extent to which that has now fully permeated our like so many aspects of our lives, nearly every aspect of our life, was probably underappreciated in the early days, but became increasingly apparent as we continue to scale and grow.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to add to that. I think while mobile was the catalyst, and one of the reasons it was a catalyst was all of the data that it generated. A device, a computer that's with us all the time, generating all these different interactions.
And it's just ours, right? It's a personal computing device, kind of for the first time ever for most people.
Yeah, the actual computer.
Yep.
Behind that, there was a whole wave of data technology that was changing. Around the time that we were getting started was probably close to the peak of some of the big data movement and people building on Hadoop. And at the same time, what you had was document-based storage, you had stream processing on things like Kafka, and then just about on the precipice of the rise of the data warehouse, and Redshift was kind of the first mover there. And the data technologies really enabled a lot of what we all experience now in terms of modern marketing technology. But those two things coming together, we saw it on mobile as the front end, but then it was data technology in so many ways on the back end.
Yeah, it's like a great convergence of two major platform shifts, right? One from mobile and then one from actual data engineering, analytics, data warehousing, moving to the cloud from on-premise platforms like Hadoop. Bill, were you going to say something? Yeah,
you got that trifecta of like capabilities really being pushed forward as well, because there was a huge amount of investment in the skill sets and the underlying technologies that helped data science flourish over time, and moving into a lot of the data science that now drives machine learning, and now bringing Gen AI into that as well, and just like that entire craft and discipline just exploded in capability. Similarly, mobile and a lot of the demands of the customer engagement space required like real-time understanding of data in a way that you didn't have before either, because in addition to these devices being personal, and therefore we have an expectation that the interactions that we have feel unique and ours and individually tailored, we also are using this technology in a lot of fleeting moments in our life. And so those opportunities to actually engage with people are like here today, or here right now and gone the next second, as I quickly back around the app and move into back into the Instagram feed or whatever. And that demand to be able to satisfy the customer expectation, stay competitive in like an incredibly intense competitive landscape across mobile, and for attention and mind share and wallet, et cetera, as well as the real time and interactive demands. Like we try to really use the concept of interactivity when we talk about responsiveness for data at Braze, because real time is kind of so bastardized in the space, but that concept of interactivity still feels very visceral, right? Like when you're interacting with a mobile device, it needs to maintain that liveness, or else it might as well not be happening. And so skill sets, technology, and customer demands all really come together in that trifecta to really push the whole field forward quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I love personally, I'll speak on behalf of myself. I love getting advertisements that are targeted to me that I look at and I'm like, oh, this is actually what I want to buy. And so for anybody that's listening to this, you can just thank Braze for that. But basically, if you go through and you're a consumer, you're leveraging all the data from yourself or the consumer themselves, and being able to provide them what they actually care about, which I think is a huge value add for all consumers and people in general. And so having that holistic approach makes a ton of sense.
And I think also really important to remember that, it's so far outside of retail. Like so much of what we talk about in marketing technology was very focused on the consumption and purchasing of kind of individual things. And certainly retail and consumer goods is our largest vertical, as it is for almost all marketing technology companies. But the other, it's actually a little bit over 20% of our business. And when you look at the other 80%, there's also a whole bunch of other categories in there where, that concept of discovery and knowledge and habit building are directly aligned with people's goals for how to live their lives. When you look at things like healthcare, fitness, learning applications, personal finance, these are all places where the role of customer engagement and the craft and the creativity of marketing can combine together with product delivery to really help people form healthy habits that they actually want to, have in their lives. And that deliver, if you can really understand people and what they care about, what they're passionate about, what they connect with, and deliver that connection to them, you can really enrich their lives. It's not just like, oh, hey, I saw a product that I wouldn't have discovered on my own via like a really good reinforcement learning model that put the right ad in front of me. It's really like, how do I look at how mobile technology and a lot of these kind of digital products and services and a lot of the first party experiences that brands have invested in particular over the last decade, and the way that they've become a part of my life and the value that I get out of that, and the role that customer engagement and a really data-driven real-time understanding of the customer can really move the ball forward in terms of delivering value to them.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I'm curious, you've had a ton of success as a company and as a founder. As you were going through this journey, were there any gaps or problems that you were seeing back then that made you confident that building a company around solving them? Like, was there certain issues that you had been seeing with digital advertising or marketing in general that gave you additional conviction outside of the mobile shift and some of these other aspects?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the earliest ones that we identified was just the mismatch in the amount of money that was being spent to acquire customers and how little attention was being paid at retaining them. I actually remember conversations with prospects in the early days where they didn't even know how many monthly active users or daily active users they had. They knew how many total downloads they had ever had, but understanding their retention funnel and how many people are still there after 7 days and 30 days, and what does that stickiness look like, and what promotes or correlates with that stickiness, and how do we drive that? These were all brand new concepts to a lot of teams in the early days of Braze, and but that mismatch in how much was being spent in acquisition and how much was being left on the table from a retention and ongoing engagement standpoint, I think that gap gave us a ton of conviction in the early days. But even in that example, you can already see the importance of new skill sets and new technology coming together in order to elucidate those opportunities for people, have the right experimental mindset to be able to build insights to improve those curves and really understand those ROI functions and optimize those aspects of the business. And that created a lot of opportunity for us, but there's a lot of timing gates on things like that too, as you need to wait for those skill sets to develop and the new technologies to arrive and get adopted.
Very cool. I've got another one for you before I switch it over to yourself, Spencer. But Bill, on your side, you've mentioned in numerous interviews that you had some fundraising challenges in the early days. And fundraising is typically always its own process for any company. We've gone through several rounds ourselves as well, and every single one of them has had its own levels of chaos. But I'm curious, especially in today's environment where funding tends to be concentrated really largely around AI tech, any words of advice for founders out there, or what got you through those times? I would just love to hear what that journey's been like for you and what your takeaway is.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that is a piece of encouragement and something that literally got us through is that one of the benefits of being a private company is you're alluding to the anecdote I've shared in the past about how we only ever got one term sheet in each of our seed rounds and all the way up through our Series C, actually. Wow. It was nothing like, you would have seen in Silicon Valley with people chasing us around with 10 term sheets, falling over each other to try to give us money. It was we had to really scratch and claw our way to getting that one person to really believe in us. Now, each one of those one people that believed in us in those rounds did make a lot of money betting on us. And one of the benefits of being a private company is that you actually only do need one person to really believe conviction, right? Or a small set of people. And as you go public, your valuation is a little bit more of a weighted average of everyone's opinions, right? But as a private company, you need to find those people who believe in you to give you the chance to make it to the next stage, and get more people to to share that conviction and grow from there. But your problem of today is find the people that will believe in you today to give you the investment that you need to prove that next stage gate and get to the next challenge. And so some of the advice around that is also that a lot of VCs are A lot of VCs are more comfortable within, certain areas of investment, analyzing certain business models, different verticals or industries, et cetera. I think that one of the easiest things for a investor, especially in the early stage, to get conviction on is if something looks like a win that they've had before. And what I mean by that is that, if you're in a new area of if you're harnessing a new wave of disruption to solve a business problem, and it's not a new business problem, there's probably a bunch of companies from 10 years ago that solve the business problem, and there's a bunch of seed and early venture capitalists that made a lot of money betting on those companies. And so as you now are in the next major wave of disruption, you're looking to solve similar business problems. The best place for you to go and find, people that are going to have conviction in your space and be able to invest in it, regardless of where it is to find the people that understand that space. They know that they can make money in it. They know that they can probably pattern match to, similar characteristics of bets that worked out really well for them in the past. And that's a place where, you don't need to boil the ocean. You don't need every venture capitalist to believe in you. You actually just need one or a handful.
Right.
What better place to go and look than people that have made money on, a problem space that looks like yours in the past?
Yeah. I got great advice. I remember when I went to raise our seed round, it was my first time raising from venture capital. I just moved to San Francisco from Portland, Oregon. And an awesome advisor of mine, his name's Ozan, he was like, look, man, you're going to get some no's, and that's okay. It's like selling a house. You just need one offer. And as long as that's the case, you're good to go. So you just got to find one person in the midst of hundreds of potential investors. And so I've shared similar feedback to other founders that were in the same stage, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's all about finding that right person with that level of conviction that believes in you and believes in the vision of the business. So super helpful. Spencer, as promised, coming over to you. You were an incredibly early employee, so you've basically been there since the very, very beginning. I think just a couple months in after Braze had started. What were those early days like? What were those early days, months, years like for you as an employee, not necessarily the founder, but I don't know, maybe effectively on the founding team? What was it like those first few months and years?
Oh, man. Well, first, I love hearing Bill retell some of these war stories. Going back into the early days of the company it's a lot of fun to sit in the time machine and go back to it. It's those early months are some of the hardest time in company building, when you really have this deep existential crisis. When you don't have product market fit, you don't know if the company will continue to persist. Obviously, from where we sit today, there's a lot that we need to focus on, and we have ambitious goals to go do that, but from a much more comfortable place than, are we going to be around in a year or 2 years? And at the same time, there's something incredibly inspiring and fun about, being deep in the trenches with some of your friends and with colleagues and smart people you really respect to go do that. For us, I think it was, like Bill said, it was a really exciting time. And as a young tech company in New York in 2011, that was also really interesting. The tech scene was pretty nascent here. And I think for us, it was an advantage in many ways because it insulated us from some of the noise. And there's also a deep marketing community in New York City. And so I think for people that we were focusing on as our customer, and as we're evolving the platform and understanding that, hey, this platform shift that's happening, it's not just about mobile. It's about all these other channels that marketers use all the time too. Email and SMS and other channels have emerged since then. New channels were created on desktop and on mobile. They want some of the same things. They want to be able to move faster. They want it to be more interactive. They want to take more advantage of data. If you would have talked to most marketers in 2011 and maybe a few too many after that, if you asked them about a database, it'd be their email database, their list of contacts. And now it's so inspiring because a lot of marketers understand the data warehouse. They understand the interconnectedness and the importance of what's happening upstream from everything else and being able to connect into that. So yeah, those early days were fun and exciting, but it's one of the most challenging times in company building.
Yeah, I also when Spencer started, like literally the first week that he started, I think we had run out of all drinks in the fridge except Red Bull, and he was just like, no problem, just drank like 8 of them a day. And I remember us like noticing that a couple days in, and was like, have you only been drinking Red Bull the last 2 days? Yeah, no, I mean, whatever.
It's all we had.
Yeah, that's right. Water's for the weak. It's that was your fuel. Sounds like a great early stage employee.
I will admit, I poured an energy drink into this glass before we started.
Of course, clear energy drink. Spencer, following up on that, so given you went through so many different stages of this business, is there a single lesson that you think that's been most pivotal for you, or something that you've discovered throughout this journey that, thinking back on, was like a really critical moment for you, either in your career or personally while you've been at Braze?
I don't know how to generalize this for everyone. I mean, I think especially for early employees, like everyone goes through their own journey. And one thing I've tried to spend more time on is connecting with folks who are at a similar place, because I think there's a challenge that you run into of the company scaling really fast. Mm-hmm. And founders, you're sticking around for the length of the company, hopefully. But a lot
signed in blood, I think, as some say.
A lot of early employees struggle with finding their way through a company. And you hear from people like, oh yeah, I'm a great sales leader for Series A and B companies. I'm a great marketing leader for this stage of company. Right. And for me, it's been about staying eternally curious and challenging myself, and where I can, trying to think like, how do I evolve at the same pace of the company? And sometimes that means going into really uncomfortable places. Again, I've been really lucky that that's led me to go deeper into technical aspects of my role that I love, managing our data team, building modern data stack, and architecting things that in the beginning of the company first, like it didn't even make sense for us to invest in. We didn't have the scale, but weren't things that were...
Well, and a lot of those technologies didn't exist yet.
Yeah, exactly. And they weren't things that were really in my wheelhouse. So pushing into that uncomfortable space where you're like, this doesn't feel like the obvious career path, but it's a thing that I think will inspire me. You have to kind of keep trying to find that, because otherwise I think you can fall into this trap of this mental model of like, I'm good at this kind of company at this stage. And then you don't have the same longevity, and you don't get to see what something looks like when you build it for 14 years.
Yeah, sounds like I often say to the team here at Coalesce, growth and comfort almost never coexist. And so at a startup, you're forced to be uncomfortable. And I think what you're talking about earlier about people sometimes find comfort along the way and then don't want to become uncomfortable again. But you put yourself in a position where you stay uncomfortable, learning new things, staying curious, which I think it's a really important skill, not just for being at a startup that's growing quickly, but just for anybody looking to grow in their career and their own personal life in general. And so that's awesome. I think one last piece on the startup journey, but if either of you could go back in time, knowing what you know today, is there anything you would have done differently, or anything that you would have done in a different way?
Yeah, let me actually just add a little build on what you were just highlighting. And a funny anecdote is that Spencer has also been referred to as various forms of like the head instigator around here over here, because and I think it ended up being very appropriate that he ended up then also building the data science stack, because a lot of times the people with the best knowledge and the most unbiased viewpoints to be able to really instigate the right changes are also the ones that have access to the data, right? And so over the years, I think that I can highlight a number of places where Spencer identified some major like things that we should leave behind, or areas that we needed to systematically increase investment in, or new perspectives that we had to take on. And a lot of times those insights actually derive from being either like closest to the customer problem, because in the in the early days, your role was really like kind of all of post sales, and like as we had early customers, you don't start hiring specialized post sales people before you have any customers. So like as you're growing in the early days, that's something that gets picked up along the way. And then over time was like being right in the middle of all the data insights. And so, I think also part of that curiosity and having that parlay into growth in a career over time as a company scales also requires translating that curiosity into impact. And in the middle, there are often insights that very often derive from taking re-looking at places where maybe momentum exists, but the foundations need to be rethought, or you need to look at things with a different lens. A lot of times data guides the way on that. Getting human bias or other sorts of whether they're rose tinted lenses or blind spots or what have you out of the picture. And I think that's been a really great role for Spencer over the years. A more direct answer to your question would be, I've alluded to this a few times, but I think timing is super important. Now, we did benefit from we did find the right venture backers. We therefore did survive, and by virtue of us being early in our market, but staying focused on it the whole time, we were ahead of everyone when it became obvious that this was a really important market. You don't always get that opportunity though. We almost ran out of money twice. It's not like the path that I would recommend exactly. It did result in a lead for us. But I think that's really important to look at both timing and making sure that you're really working toward change that's more durable. And one of my favorite examples of that in mobile is that I remember conversations in the early days about there's a land grab out there right now. We need to get to every big app or every app that we can, and that would mean less discipline in all these other areas just so we could get the reach, et cetera. And you probably remember in the early days of mobile, 100,000 apps, and I'm making up these numbers, right? But 100,000 apps in the App Store in 2012 and 400,000 apps in the App Store in 2014, and see all these charts of just the rapid growth of the App Store, and and those numbers are from 10 years ago. Braze today still has less than 3,000 customers. So the fact that there were 600,000 apps in the App Store in 2015, totally irrelevant, right, to the way that we needed to build our business. What really mattered was that there was a much smaller number of applications that were starting to build sustainable businesses. And that was actually the change that was coming about that was going to be a lot more durable. And we were building for that future. And that ultimately is what led to our ability to continue to compound growth at the scale required to eventually go public and keep building to the position that we're in today. And I highlight that just because I think it's so relevant to right now with the AI disruption, which is there's a lot of independent high velocity change happening, and then there's a lot of compounding effects that are happening because of all of those. If you're just kind of right on the leading edge, it's interesting and it's exciting, et cetera, but you really need to think carefully around what the composed or compounding effects, as well as the second order effects of all that change is going to be, to find the change that'll be durable so that you can really work on building a business that's going to be able to compound value creation around that durable change.
Right. You touched on this a little bit too. So, as you've been leveraging data to build the company in many ways, not just the product itself, but also how you navigate the business, are you seeing any trends or challenges in data right now, whether it's with customers, product development, anything that's relevant or resonating right now?
Well, we've gone a surprisingly long time without talking about AI. So
yeah,
I think one of the things I'm seeing on our team is that as there's AI capabilities getting added throughout the data stack, I mean, even down to people using Cursor and Claude Code and things to support some pipeline development, scripting, and even into some of the data science work. And then obviously we use Looker, there's conversational analytics capabilities that are being layered in there. So every part of the stack has some AI component now. Right. Snowflake has Cortex, you can find it everywhere. I think a lot of data people are asking themselves, am I solving a data problem or an AI problem? And I know how to solve data problems. A lot of the AI problems are new. And so I think there's this little bit of crisis of confidence in that moment of, I know I want to move forward. I know I want to bring in AI into our capabilities, that it's going to have a lot of potential for what we go do, but it's pushing me, again, kind of outside of my comfort zone. I'm not too worried about it. And to give everyone maybe a little bit of relief, I think what we're seeing is that some of the great products that we're using have abstracted some of that in a way and productized it to a sufficient degree that if you're really great at the data problem, and in Snowflake, for example, to use Cortex really effectively, you have to start with data models and solid data models. And if you don't have that and you throw a bunch of unorganized data at it, especially with scale, then it's just not going to do exactly what you want. And so we're finding that there's still like an 80% data skill that's required to take advantage of that, and then 20% some new learning. But actually, that's getting easier over time as the models get better, as it gets more productized into some of these platforms.
That's cool. We have a joint customer, one of my favorite customers, the RSG Group. They own Gold's Gym, McFit, John Reed. They were mentioning that as a data engineering team, so they use Coalesce to actually build out all the models that you were just describing earlier. They said that working with Braze was their favorite project that they've done in recent months, was that implementation. And I would imagine it touches on what you were describing earlier, Bill, around that experience of the gym, not the gym employees, but the consumers that come into the gyms and whatever advertisements come towards them, or just the whole experience on how the gym's able to support them as a client. And so that was just a cool thing to hear as you all were coming to join us on this podcast. Satish, I'm asking a bunch of questions. So after Bill shares his thoughts there, I would love to pass it over to you to ask something for Bill and Spencer too.
I guess we already covered those. I was going to ask around some AI questions, but one thing that you probably, Spencer already touched upon, which is how these workflows are changing with AI and humans, and you talked really about that already. But is it in data engineering that you're seeing this a lot in your marketing area as well? How does that impact like the same workflows?
Yeah, so I think at Braze, we're focused on building for both composable data and composable intelligence within the platform. And those come together in these customer engagement use cases because when you think about what drives really great interaction, and it's great to bring up the shared customer example in the health and fitness space, which is a place where the more kind of smooth delivery of product and marketing and customer engagement to just help provide the right nudges to push people toward healthier lifestyles and healthier habits and remove friction as they're accessing different gym benefits and just becoming a more loyal customer. Those things are all just win-win-win, right? But they require the combination of like knowing the right times, elucidating the moments that matter, and there's also a lot there as well. We one of the like a gym use case is like a lot of times people will show up at a gym and their like membership has expired or they used up all their class passes or whatever, and sometimes that's enough friction for them to just decide to skip it and like move on to drinks or something right away, or miss out on that opportunity to take that class that might have developed the right habit or what have you. And so there's all these places where there's really positive feedback loops to being focused on a really seamless product experience and doing that along with marketing and messaging and engagement overall. But in order to do that, you need to have the understanding of the customer and what they really care about, which that some of those things are a little bit more permanent. And so the latency and liveness requirements on insights like those are not as demanding as, say, like someone is literally at a turnstile right now and their pass is not working, right? Which is like a real-time signal. But there's a lot of sophisticated modeling that can be put on top of the data that's also changing a little bit less like with less liveness, if you will. And then, of course, in the customer engagement moment, you need to be able to bring those things together. So you need these deep insights that have come about because of the first-party data that you've built over time, the insights that you've layered on top of that through the great data science and kind of ML modeling work or predictive work that people have done. And then you need the kind of real-time flow of data to be able to elucidate those moments and those opportunities to be able to engage, and then bring that together in the moment to create compelling content that's going to drive relevance and help actually identify the goal that you're trying to work toward for either your business or the customer, or in the perfect world where you've harmonized what the customer's goals are and what your business goals are together. And then you're making another decision, with the aid of AI to be able to increase the performance or the conversion rate or the the relevance or the resonance of that what ultimately gets delivered to them as an experience. And so throughout that, you need all this flexibility, and you need all this flexibility with data. You need sophistication in the prediction and the modeling. And then you also need the liveness of the data to elucidate those moments. You need a system that can orchestrate those things together. And then there's another layer of optimization that has to happen in order to increase that relevance and that resonance. And AI and really fantastic data tooling that can provide data flows quickly, completely, and with a low total cost of ownership need to come together with the creativity from marketing and the interfaces from product to really bring all this to life. And I think that AI also has, an incredible role to play in not just deepening those insights and enhancing the relevance, but also in the day-to-day for the marketer or the customer engagement professional that's responsible for orchestrating all of this. Because the goal of marketing is so often to increase LTV or increase the strength of the relationship or what have you. But the reality of the day-to-day of a lot of marketers is still going into a dashboard and clicking through 18 campaigns and checking the click-through rates and the funnel on that, trying to make tweaks and come up with clever subject lines, right? And the gap between I am orchestrating a strategy as a conductor where I'm bringing together the business goals and the customer journey. I'm merging those together with insights that are being derived from in these units of intelligence that I have from models or predictive capabilities, or bringing in LLMs or what have you in order to make these judgments, and then combining those in the moments of delivery. That's a strategic conductor process. And the better job that we can do in delivering AI technology that can lift that abstraction layer that the marketer is able to work at, so that they can move from the drudge work of campaign by campaign, click-through rates, et cetera, to up at a high level of how am I elucidating the right moments? How am I resonating with people? What are my business goals? How do I make sure those are properly prioritized by the AI so that when they're finding they're elucidating these moments where they can actually have interaction with the customer, they're combining together that customer's goals with my business goals in the most productive way, driving that forward, automatically optimizing, et cetera. There's a whole bunch in that process where I think more capable AI that we can trust to run at a higher layer of abstraction and to make more compound decisions autonomously, that ultimately changes the role that the marketer is able to play, lets them be more strategic, lift up to being more of a conductor. And we're really focused on not just speeding up what they've already been doing, right? And that drudge work of the, campaign, management and babysitting, what have you, but really lifting the level at which they work to be able to be that strategic conductor in their businesses.
Yeah, it's funny because I can't imagine. I mean, we've got a very technical audience that listens into this podcast, but I feel like a lot of people have no idea what goes on behind the scenes to lead to such great marketing or such great decisioning. But it truly is such a complex workflow. And we apply a similar philosophy around taking all those complexities, simplifying it for our customers, certainly for the data engineering processes, but on your end for the actual consumer experience, which it's so cool. There's a reason why you've had the success that you've had. We've got time for one or two last questions. First one is a simple one. It's just around every year we do some thought leadership on trends that we're seeing in the market a year in advance. So for 2026. And the question is, what, if any, business defining trends do you see coming in 2026?
It's not terribly original, but I think agents are here to stay. One, I think, thing that's been interesting for us, and especially on this during this conversation, talking about some of the history of our company and platform trends that we've been through, I've just felt that it's such an interesting time, and we've been able to learn so much from seeing how mobile disrupted the world, but then, underneath that, cloud computing and other big technology shifts, that Bill and I have spent a lot of time talking about how similar this moment feels. And how do we just take what we've learned from the past 14 years to help marketers, and where we can too, be a great partner to data people that work with marketing teams, so that in this world of technology disruption that we're in now, that we can be that trusted partner for them going into 2026 and beyond. But I think tightly coupled into that, we're investing quite a bit in agentic products. In September, we launched a product called Agent Console. And so we're taking a lot of the things that Bill has talked about in terms of real-time architecture operating at scale, and we're designing systems that let marketers integrate that directly into these campaigns and into these journeys. So as people are going down a path, and we could think about, fitness and Gold's Gym as an example, how can they use LLMs to make those journeys even better? And that could be part of a more conversational experience. It could be trying to categorize them in a smarter way as a customer, maybe where they are in their fitness journey. And I think for marketers, 2026 is going to be the year that they really crack the code on how they get value and prove value to their business out of AI, but especially out of agentic products.
Yeah, and I would just add to that that composability and combination, I think, are going to be increasingly important. I referenced this before, that something that really characterizes a lot of the the AI frontier right now is that we've got a lot of different independent technologies that are all racing forward at the same time. And I think that as a result, there's actually a lot of underexplored combinations and compositions of those technologies together, as well as integrations with existing, high scale, reliable, durable products and other integration points in customer journeys and such that are so far underexplored in terms of where these technologies are going to be able to move the ball forward. And so I think that the foundational capabilities have leaped ahead so far, and now there's a lot of cross-pollination of perspective and skill sets and technologies to be able to compose these things together and surprise us again.
Amazing. Gentlemen, it's been a ton of fun. I will leave it at that, but I will offer, if you have any closing thoughts, anything around Braze, anything for the audience that's tuning into this, what would you like to leave them with before we let you back to your amazing Friday?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say, I know that we've got primarily a data audience here today, and I would encourage you, if your marketing teams or customer engagement teams use Braze, to learn a lot more about it, because I think that the best Braze customers are the ones where there's really fluid collaboration between the data teams, the engineering teams, and the marketing teams. And when they can build together and get that experiment loop flowing of great ideas come to life quickly through great collaboration with builders, and then those results get analyzed and advanced into new experiments through the craft of data science and data analysis, that loop spinning and iterating is exactly how our best performing customers work together. And so if that's not something you're doing today, look into it.
Yeah, take it from us too. We see it firsthand with our customers here at Coalesce and the success that they've had with both Coalesce but also with Braze.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.